Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Emma Ferrick. We're going to talk about systems and operations. Welcome to the show, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do. This is a topic that sometimes gets interwoven into some of the conversations that we've had on this podcast. But you really specialize in systems and operations. And I think that for some people, that's kind of a scary subject, it's like, wouldn't it be nice if I had more systematization in my business and didn't need to be going through all of these extra steps? And wouldn't it be nice if I had ways to leverage my business so I could grow it faster and make more money with less of my time? Let's start by talking about what it is that you do so that our listeners really get a sense of what it is that we're talking about here.
Yeah. So I'm an operations and systems strategist. My background is in operations management. I graduated with a degree in operations management and a certificate in Lean Six Sigma, which is usually applied in a product or manufacturing sense. But when I dove into the online space and found out about the online space while I was still working in my corporate job, I realized that there was such a need and there was ways for me to apply what I learned in school and had a background in and experience in online for remote teams or virtual teams or digital platforms, you name it. And especially with the pandemic happening with teams going remote and going virtual, there was a huge need for helping agencies and teams just grow their online space and having the tech to even just communicate properly, because that's also a system that sometimes is overlooked, is team communication, and it's in its own process, its own thing when you get to a point in your business. But that is kind of how I got started. I was just a VA and I quickly niched into operations and systems since that's where my passion is. I love problem solving with my clients and coming in and helping them organize, streamline, and simplify their business with not just tech, but people supporting them as well.
Okay, so there's a lot that we can actually go into here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are operating their business as solopreneurs or have a very, very small team. Maybe they have one VA or they have an assistant and maybe a graphic designer or something like that, right? And it's still beneficial to be setting up systems right from the beginning so that later on you don't have to try to retrain everyone. And if you lose someone, it's a lot easier to train someone and replace that team member when you have your systems in place. But right now there are businesses, and I personally have consulted with them. I know some of my clients have the brick and mortar, and there's kind of a different set of systems and tech sometimes that you have in those types of environments. But really, when you look at a business, regardless of what type of business it is, and that's why I'm, prefacing it this way, is you've got to have some of this stuff. And it may not all be applicable to your business, but certainly even from the very basic fundamental level of having, your scheduling software to, being able to communicate with an entire team and organize documents and data and just so much. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what are you seeing when clients come into your world? What are you frequently seeing where there's sort of that breakdown that needs to be improved upon for their business?
Yeah. So kind of what you mentioned before is people will grow and then they get to the point of not realizing they put themselves in a pretty like scalable position, or they put themselves in a rock and a hard place because they don't want to plan for worse. They just don't realize they don't need to plan for worst case scenario like turnover, or they become the bottleneck themselves, or they place a team member and that becomes the bottleneck because they're like, oh, I have someone doing it. I don't have to worry about it. Or they grow so quickly and they don't have the proper support or systems documented. So they're so busy that they don't have time to even properly onboard a team member. Because I've seen this happen a ton. And when I was a VA myself, it happened a lot, but that's kind of what led me down this path. Was I was the one on the reciprocating end of things not just being communicated in the best way possible or in a coherent, because my clients or people coming to me are so in the weeds or so overwhelmed, or they know their topic so well, they don't know how to like even simply document it in a way that's going to translate to someone who's never done it. So like I always go in with that mindset, and that's kind of nice, and why people like working with an ops consultant versus having it in-house is because I can come in third party totally blind to what you're doing. Like I know different industries, I know different businesses because I've worked with and in brick and mortar, I've worked with, real estate investors. My husband owns a contracting and a real estate investment, so I help support his business. I've worked in online, so I've seen a lot of different businesses. But the main problem is they get so in the weeds that they don't know how to communicate their expertise to someone who's never done it. And they'll miss steps, or things won't make sense, or they don't know how to communicate it. Or they grow to the point that they're just so busy that they don't know what person they need to bring on. Or in my case, I always teach my clients, and especially those who are solopreneurs, put tech and invest in tech and systems first, even if it's scary to you, because it's cheaper and easier to manage tech than it is to manage people. And that is like onboarding someone, and onboarding a team is its own system and its own process that you need to document. So like I just wrote out a piece of content about this. Like in my business, I run my business off of less than $2,000 in tech a year. So the overhead cost on the tech is so much cheaper than if I would have outsourced a bunch right away. And I want to help people who are solopreneurs understand that before they get to the point of, oh my gosh, I need all these processes documented. I don't even know where to start. So how do I even support myself? So it's easier to scale when you have the tech, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and everyone goes into analysis paralysis. I see it's like you're just overthinking it. You don't need to take this long to decide. And there's just like a couple of key factors that I teach or talk about with my clients. Like, will it grow with you? Is it within your budget? Or if it is a stretch in your budget, like, is it going to support you in 6 months where you want to be? Like we look at the features, we look at, does it integrate with other things you're using, or is it going to make more steps in the process? So those are like some of the key areas we go over when looking at tech in my clients' businesses.
So there might be a couple people who feel like this is slightly over their head, but let's kind of break it down, because there are certain things I'm sure you see that are more commonly needed across the board for different businesses. So let's make it really practical for people. So what are some of the things that you see almost categorically that businesses need to implement in order to be scalable and to run efficiently?
So no matter what business you are, there's the three core systems / areas. That's the other nice thing, unique thing about ops, is it can touch every aspect of your business. because you're going to have a system and a process for everything, whether you realize it or not. But the three main areas that every business has, whether it's brick or mortar or online, is sales, marketing, and then either you can break this one into two separate, it's product development or client management, depending on if you're a service or a product provider, but it's still to the core the same thing. You have to be able to provide quality and consistency there. So making sure that system is in place. But for sales and marketing, those kind of go hand in hand, and those are the fundamental pieces that you need in a business. And when I say marketing, everyone always is like, oh, social media. I'm like, no, there's systems in your marketing that don't have to revolve around social media. And then how are you getting sales? How are you getting leads? Those are going to be your main function. And what's the process look like for you to do that in a way that's the least of an energy drain? Because I see a lot of people who follow gurus and follow experts, and that's great if social media is like where you get your ideal clients, but that's not for everyone. So, finding what works for you and where your clients are, that's the system that you should focus on building out first. And that goes hand in hand with marketing. Who's your ideal client? Who are you messaging to? How are you speaking to them? And then we build processes to support that to make it easier. And one of the core things I tell clients, because I do work with a lot of online people, but is having especially in this day and age, it's just like a virtual headquarters for your business, because it's like just a place for you to have. The less you have in your head, the less you have in your head, the better you're going to feel, because that's a very common thing. Is they're just trying to remember everything, or they're doing it pen and paper. And pen and paper is good. I use pen and paper too, but putting it somewhere that's going to pull you to the next action is really key in what I've seen. Like simply, I just put like in place today a lead tracker for a client, so that like she doesn't have it all in her head. She's like, I'm always so worried. I'm missing leads. I'm not following up with them. I was like, okay, we put it in her ClickUp. We made it easy for her. It's, it's going to tell her when she needs to follow up with that person. And it's all right there for her. So whatever you can do to get it out of your head, it's going to make you feel less anxious.
Yeah.
I know I kind of went off on a tangent,
No,
but that aligns.
It's a good point that you're making. Understanding how we as humans operate, there's a tendency to resist making some of these types of changes. I've heard people's objections to a CRM. Oh, I don't know where, it's too overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And what you're sharing here is a really important consideration that I would challenge anyone to really look at what their apprehensions are, because when you are properly utilizing some of these different tools and technologies, it makes you more efficient. It makes you more effective. The mind cannot retain that much data. Yeah. So then you're actually creating not only the likelihood that you're going to drop the ball, but you're creating all of this unnecessary stress, because inherently, at some point you are going to drop the ball, or that you already are dropping the ball. So we have to challenge our beliefs and reframe some of those stories that we're telling ourselves. Oh yeah. When we shift that, that's where we get into, talking about the scaling piece. So.
Well, and I also think, just to echo what you're saying there, one thing I do see often is the mindset. They're like, I don't know how to use it right. And I would love to preface that if anyone's listening, shift your mindset out of there's no right way to use the tool, as long as it works for you and you understand it. There's no one right way. Like I do ClickUp setups all the time. I've done other systems, and the core pieces are relatively the same, but each business and each person, there's going to be unique ways they use it. And that's just the point of the tool is to make it work for you. Like there's no perfect or right way. Like they have to get out of the mindset of, oh, I'm not using it right, or I'm not sure if I can use it at all. It's just, you know, if it works for you, it works for you. And you have to just try.
Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about you as the business owner. So I love to ask my client or my guests, what is something that you had to overcome in your own mindset in order to get to where you are today? And you don't have to give the entire backstory, but we've all had those sort of catalyzing moments where we had to break through some massive resistance in order to up level. And a lot of times we've got a couple that are near and dear to our heart. So I'm curious what you feel inspired to share with us about your own journey.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my journey was different from a lot of people because I always say like my business helped heal me. Like if I didn't take and start this business, I wouldn't have healed from a lot of trauma, because having my business caused me to address a lot of mindset issues and personal development things within myself. And it kind of gave me like a landline or a lifeline almost. So when I was still working in corporate, I went through a domestic violence situation. I became a single mom at 22. I was like, basically felt like at rock bottom. I had been abused for over a year. So having those mindsets of, if anyone's listening and can relate, because I share my story often in my messaging, people reach out to me so frequently. And it's so weird to think like there's more people who go through this than and it's crazy to me that that's like one of the ways I can connect with people. But I had to go through such a shift of, going through that trauma and addressing, because I was always told you're not smart enough to own a business. You're not, because it has always been a dream of mine to own a business or somehow be an entrepreneur so I could be there for my kids, because I wanted more than anything to be a mom. And hearing like, you're not smart enough, you're not brave enough, or you don't have the, know-how in that relationship, and like just hitting rock bottom through that, and then just being like, how do I provide for my daughter? And that's where the business came in. Was I decided to be a VA to have an extra income so I could have some control in my life, because I didn't want to keep suffering the financial control that my abuser was putting on me. So I didn't want to have to feel like I needed child support or I needed anything from anybody. And so by going full time in my business, that's when I started to address a lot of things like with my own self-love and personal development, and being open to all these different ways that aren't traditionally advertised in healing trauma. So I've tried different things, I've gone through different programs, and I've been able to invest in myself in ways that I couldn't have done in corporate. But really what it came down to was trusting myself and being able to love myself in a better way is what I feel like that allowed me to have better control, better success, huge mindset shifts this past year, and the confidence to even grow a business, because it is really scary when it comes to, being an entrepreneur with the unknown and letting go of some of that control.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. I've been working with business owners for over a decade on very, very deep stuff. And a lot of people over the years that I've been doing this, they don't seek me out because everything's rainbows and butterflies, right? Yeah. When we reach out for help, it's because we finally get to a place within ourselves where we recognize enough is enough. I can't do this to myself anymore.
Yep.
So the message that I feel is really valuable here in this part of our conversation is this stuff is so incredibly common.
Yeah.
The emotional pain that people are dragging through life is really quite astounding when you can see behind the facade that most people are putting up. And
Right.
I work with a lot of individuals that are at different stages in their business. Many of them are very successful, and they're still dealing with these things. They're still healing these things. It is an ongoing process of self-love and self-empowerment and healing all of that stuff from the past.
Yeah, it definitely is it was a huge eye opener to even, I feel like if I'd stayed in corporate, I wouldn't have gotten to that point that quickly, maybe later on in life. But I feel like entrepreneurship pushes you to new levels in different ways. And everyone I've talked to, clients that I've worked with that are six figures or just business friends, they always say like right before they have their next breakthrough, they have to address something inside themselves. And I've seen the same thing where I've had to be okay with not knowing what the next thing and letting go of control, because I was a huge control freak, and you can't be that way. And you can't worry all the time.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with that.
I've talked about it on other episodes. I teach it to my clients. I refer to it as the breakdown before the breakthrough, and it happens every time we're ready to up level, every single time.
Yeah.
Once you recognize what it is, it makes it much easier to get through. But that does not mean that the stuff that has been triggered, the stuff that's getting kicked up, it can be pretty sticky stuff sometimes, and it can be challenging to release and let go of, even when you know that what's happening is this sort of natural phenomenon, because the subconscious mind's job is to keep us the same, right?
Right.
And when we are stretching ourselves, when we're creating a new self-image, when we are doing things that are unknown to our subconscious mind, that is going to set off warning bells.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people in life, they just use that as the excuse to stop and stay where they are and live very unsatisfying lives. Business owners have an innate drive to just push beyond those things. And it can sometimes be a very lonely journey, because most people are not comfortable saying, hey, I'm going through this internal hell right now. A lot of times people think there's something wrong with them, and it's not. It's just bad conditioning. I always say, that is stuff that we can work through. You can change that stuff. And there are so many tools and techniques and mentors and support that can get you through it. But the important piece to all of it is knowing that it's okay. It's natural. It's okay. And it does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that the universe is saying, no, you can't have that. You can't be successful. You're unworthy. You're not good enough. That's just all the shit we tell ourselves. And we have to do that inner work to start to release and let that stuff go, so we can finally break through to that next level. And, then we can coast there for a while. And that's always nice. And then, you're going to experience it again. You're going to have that inner call for the up leveling, and you're going to go through that cycle again. And you just start to recognize it's just a normal part of the process. Sometimes I've even said to clients, congratulations. And they're like, probably thinking, F you, Alicia, what the hell do you know?
Right.
No, I know that on the other side of this is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So Emma, how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah. I have my Instagram, which is at elf_operations. I have my Facebook page, and that's also at elf operations. Or they can find me on my website at elfoperations.com. And I do have some resources and tools on my website. If anything that we've talked about today resonates with them, or, you're in that tech analysis paralysis, I have a free workbook that'll help you go through that, so you're not stuck. And now, like, what tech do I use? You can walk through the same process I use with my clients, And I have a strategy, like a evergreen masterclass is what I call it, because it gets just delivered to your inbox, but it's for those people who we've kind of mentioned earlier in the show. If you want to have stuff in place before you're burnt out and before you're over in capacity, it helps you break that down. It's called Success Without Stress, so that you can get the foundations that you need in place before you hit overwhelm in that space.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma. I appreciate everything that you've shared with us. It has been a really great conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love being able to share with everyone's audience and give value for others in their business.
And of course, I have to thank all of our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.